What's happened with Barack Obama? See, this whole technique of problem, reaction, solution, we're now seeing a problem, reaction, solution presidential game here. They brought Bush in, the people that control Bush, the neocons, and what they've done for 8 years is create massive problems, financial problems, overseas war problems, military problems, problems of every kind.
And he was also arrogant and didn't care and lied and said, I don't read the newspaper. Exactly. A perfect psyop, what the Romans would do with a governor, give them an abusive governor, but then bring in a slicker governor who could engage in even more abuse, and the people would accept him as a savior.
The president-elect, 45. Yeah. I love Donald Trump. I love him. I love him. I realized that watching him back there, I just love him. He's so good that actually it makes me deep down suspect myself, because my discernment says he's solid gold. Trump deserves a Peace Prize.
We've got Trump Pence 2020 t-shirts.
I'm very uplifted and excited to see what General Mad Dog Mattis will do as our next Secretary of Defense.
Whoa! Have you seen what Trump's been tweeting? Well, get ready for another epic Trump tweets of the week.
Do you know how goddamn crazy it would be if Trump became a hero?
He is a hero. I don't want to just fawn, but when something is real, I have to call it the bona fide, real McCoy that it is.
I just wanted to ask, what happened to the liberty movement?
We're having the so-called alt-right and those parts of the alternative media that supported Trump already aghast at the way he's going back on everything. So fast as well. I mean,
You can say any way you want to say it, but Bill Clinton was abusive to women.
In one case, it's about exposure. In another case, it's about groping and fondling and touching against a woman's will.
And rape.
And rape.
Hillary Clinton attacked those same women and attacked them viciously. 4 of them here tonight come out of her crooked campaign.
Is to replenish the Social Security Trust Fund. It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
I don't want to hurt them. I don't want to hurt them. They're good people. I don't want to hurt them.
It was like all of a sudden, with President Obama and Michelle and Bill and Hillary, and they were going to Michigan. No, it's okay. No, forget it. That plays great before the election. No, we don't care, right? Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo as long.
This week, Henry Kissinger continued a tradition that started with President John F. Kennedy. He has advised every president since, up to and including President-elect Trump, whom he met with on Thursday.
As we know, Henry Kissinger and Donald Trump have been friends for a very long time and even had weeks of telephone conversations between each other when Donald Trump was running for president of the United States. So you might be asking yourself, what's out of the ordinary? What's the problem here? Oh yeah, Henry Kissinger is a top globalist scumbag who is a part of all the secret societies, Trilateral Commission, CFR, Bilderberg Group, Bohemian Grove, who has been pulling the strings of U.S. foreign policy for decades. Donald Trump is colluding, is cuddling this old man, and even said that he takes his foreign policy advice from it and that Henry Kissinger agrees with Donald Trump's foreign policy.
I want the entire corrupt Washington establishment to hear our words, our words. We're going to win today, and we're going to Washington, D.C. to drain the swamp. Absolutely. Funny how that term caught on, isn't it? I tell everyone, I hated it. Somebody said, drain the swamp. I said, oh, that's so hokey. That is so terrible. I said, all right, I'll try it. So like a month ago, I said, drain the swamp. The place went crazy. I said, whoa, what's this? Then I said it again. Then I started saying it like I meant it, right?
I think the proof is in the pudding. And the pudding is, who are you selecting for your key positions?
Trump is on a hiring spree for the very same people that he claimed to be fighting against.
Even if he was on the verge of appointing some people I could get excited about, which he isn't, there's also the deep state, the invisible government, the shadow government, the people in the military-industrial complex, the financial industry, the Federal Reserve, and so far, I think this swamp looks like it's not going to be drained all that well.
Don't continue to push this. Trump is a populist fighting the New World Order, especially now that he's appointing CFR members to his cabinet.
All right, so let's go back to that situation in the Crimea. It's an autonomous republic which elects its own parliament. The region is connected to Ukraine in the north and Russia to the east. Nearly 60% of the population are Russians. 24% are ethnic Ukrainians.
Now, the people of Crimea have voted overwhelmingly in favor of joining Russia in Sunday's referendum.
The people of Crimea, from what I've heard, would rather be with Russia than where they were.
Russia, like us, has nuclear weapons, folks. It would be really nice if we got along with Russia, and wouldn't it be nice if we teamed up with Russia and we knocked the hell out of ISIS and got rid of these people? Wouldn't that be nice? Right?
The president has been incredibly tough on Russia. He continues to raise the issue of Crimea, which the previous administration had allowed to be seized by Russia. His ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, stood before the UN Security Council on her first day and strongly denounced the Russian occupation of Crimea.
The United States continues to condemn and call for an immediate end to the Russian occupation of Crimea. Crimea is a part of Ukraine. Our Crimea-related sanctions will remain in place until Russia returns control over the peninsula to Ukraine.
President Trump has made it very clear that he expects the Russian government to de-escalate violence in the Ukraine and return Crimea.
It looks right now like Donald Trump has just broken his major promise on normalizing relations with Russia in order to defeat radical Islamic terrorists together. It's pretty simple. It's a fundamental interest that these two super world powers should not nuke the crap out of each other and destroy each other. To me, the future conflict with Russia is very clear and a continuation by Donald Trump of what Barack Obama started.
After 6 days of heavy fighting, U.S. forces say tonight they have taken the town of Fallujah.
U.S. and Iraqi forces are now in control of 70% of Fallujah. It's been a devastating display of American firepower. The battle for Fallujah.
It's a very important legal doctrine in the United States of America and around the world is the doctrine of command responsibility. If you have a large-scale atrocity that takes place, the commanding general of the operation is held responsible. The same standard applies to General Mattis, and so we have to look very closely at his command of the U.S. Marine Corps in Fallujah, which is an event that I covered in 2004 as an unembedded journalist. And in that battle, U.S. Marines under his command killed so many people, one UN estimate says 90% of them were civilians, that the municipal football stadium of the city had to be turned into a graveyard. Marines shot at ambulances, Marines shot at aid workers. All of these are things that Mattis could be tried for, potentially, for war crimes.
Just spoke to our great General Mattis just now, who reconfirmed that, and I quote, Ryan was a part of a highly successful raid that generated large amounts of vital intelligence that will lead to many more victories in the future against our enemy. Ryan's legacy is etched into eternity. Thank you.
Warmongering is alive and well, tragically. Focus on the widow. What a terrible use of tragedy for political purposes.
It's so sad and so tragic to see somebody like that suffering so, because the truth is, he shouldn't have died. Yeah. You know, he shouldn't have died. We shouldn't have been there. We shouldn't have had that raid that didn't do any good. The Yemenis had never had the people there, never were hostile to the Americans. But what about some of these civilian killings? What about the 8-year-old? Isn't that a tragic story?
There was the big
haba about how one serviceman had died, there was also 30 other people who died, many of them children, who were completely innocent in that attack. And when you go and bomb these countries and you kill these families, you create terrorists because people want revenge for you bombing my sister and blowing up my mother. You don't want to come and strap a bomb to myself and blow you up. That's how you create terrorism, and that's what we're seeing, just a continuation of the same thing.
In 2007, former General Wesley Clark told Democracy Now! About a conversation he had while at the Pentagon, at the time controlled by the neocons.
So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
All you have to do is replace Lebanon with Yemen, and Trump's travel ban list is an exact mirror.
And of course, no punishment to the Saudis, and their record is so bad. They're probably one of the worst when it comes to radicalism. They were involved in 9/11, the whole works. Nope, hands off. Don't do anything. I guess maybe there are some business deals over there.
I have also imposed new sanctions on entities and individuals who support Iran's ballistic missile program and reaffirmed our unbreakable alliance with the State of Israel.
And so, since Trump came into office, the mantra has been Iran, 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 Iran. And there's a reason for that. Let me go back to another document. It's from 2009, and it was published by a think tank called the Brookings Institution, and it was called Which Path to Persia? Options for a New American Strategy Towards Iran. This is what the document said. Any military operation against Iran will likely be very unpopular around the world and require the proper international context, both to ensure the logistical support the operation would require and to minimize the blowback from it. The best way to minimize international opprobrium and maximize support, however grudging or covert, is to strike only when there is a widespread conviction that the Iranians were given, but then rejected, a superb offer, one so good that only a regime determined to acquire nuclear weapons and acquire them for the wrong reasons would turn it down. Under those circumstances, the United States or Israel could portray its operations as taken in sorrow, not anger, and at least some in the international community would conclude that the Iranians brought it on themselves by refusing a very good deal. Anyone notice a connection with current events? This is what Trump said. Iran is playing with fire. They don't appreciate how kind President Obama was to them, not me. Which kind of fits this whole Brookings Institution scenario to put the blame for any conflict upon Iran.
People get annoyed, oh no, Trump is different, Trump is different. On this issue, it's not different.
They've been trained to turn down and refuse illegal orders. So what would you do as Commander-in-Chief if the U.S. military refused to carry out those orders?
They won't refuse. They're not going to refuse me, believe me.
But they're illegal.
Let me just tell you, we have to obey the laws. Okay? Have to obey the laws. But we have to expand those laws because we have to be able to fight on at least somewhat of an equal footing, or we will never, ever knock out ISIS and all of the others that are so bad. We better expand our laws, or we're being a bunch of suckers, and they are laughing at us. They are laughing at us, believe me.
Hey, firm. It was the video that put WikiLeaks on the map, turned the tide of war in Iraq, and landed Private First Class Bradley Manning in military detention.
A graphic video dubbed the Collateral Murder, showing U.S. helicopters slaying over a dozen Iraqi civilians.
It's claimed the WikiLeaks revelations about Hillary Clinton helped get Donald Trump elected. Trump, however, is not a friend of whistleblowers.
On the State Department, earlier this morning, President Trump mentioned Chelsea Manning in a tweet. Ungrateful traitor, Chelsea Manning, who should never have been released from prison.
Claim it'll be on. He's going to talk about WikiLeaks. You had nothing to do with the leaking of those documents.
It's disgraceful.
You do think it's disgraceful?
I think there should be like death penalty or something.
No one wants to be a whistleblower. This is something that's hard to do, and this is America. When something goes wrong, don't we want somebody to stand up and say something about it?
What would you do about it?
I think he's a total traitor, and I would deal with him harshly.
This guy's a bad guy. And, you know, there is still a thing called execution. You really have to take a strong hand. You have thousands of people with access to kind of material like this. We're not going to have a country any longer.
We should always make a distinction that right and wrong is a very different standard than legal and illegal.
One this morning, Donald Trump already up tweeting something that is causing us all to think a lot more about what's going on. He says, terrible, just found out that Obama had my wires tapped in Trump Tower just before the victory. Nothing found. This is McCarthyism. Is it legal?
We need Edward Snowden more now than ever to help sort this out.
We've had the Chelsea Manning leaks, then came Edward Snowden, and today another huge WikiLeaks data dump. They're calling it Vault 7, and they say it's from a division at the heart of the CIA. Thousands of documents, millions of lines of code, and if it is all genuine, it shows the extraordinary array of hacking and spying tools available to the CIA. Some of that won't be a surprise, some of it's colourful, the ability to infect Samsung TVs, internet-connected ones, and turn them into microphones that record conversations.
Trafficking in national security information, as is alleged WikiLeaks has done here, is a very serious offense. And it represents a compromise of the security of the American people. And this president and this administration will take that very seriously and use the full force of the law and the resources of the United States to hold all of those to account that were involved.
Some Republicans have said Julian Assange should be in prison. Does the president agree?
I think the U.S. government had a position on Julian Assange's position in the past, and I don't see anything that's changed that. He has compromised in the past and undermined our national security.
People in the alternative media who have campaigned against certain things and exposed certain things over the years, they really do need to rub their eyes and refocus on what they're now supporting.